White wine has over 400 varieties, and most people recognize about 5. The real stories behind the ones they're missing are absolutely insane. One was 8 acres from disappearing off the planet entirely, and another got invented because workers showed up to harvest weeks too late. Let's start with the grape that took over the world. We're starting with Chardonnay, the white wine that's basically taken over the entire planet. Right now, Chardonnay is the most planted white wine grape on Earth, with around 211,000 hectares growing everywhere from England to New Zealand. It started in Burgundy, France, sometime in the Middle Ages. But there's a wild fact almost nobody talks about. Chardonnay is actually a cross between Pinot Noir, the famous red wine grape, and Gouais Blanc, this scrappy peasant grape French farmers grew because it survived everything. UC Davis researchers proved it with DNA testing in 1999. So the world's most popular white wine is literally the offspring of a noble grape, and a grape so mediocre that medieval France tried to ban it. The grape barely tastes like anything on its own. Almost everything you taste comes from where it's grown and which barrel it sat in. A Chablis tastes like green apple and wet stones, while a Napa Chardonnay tastes like butter, vanilla, and pineapple. Same exact grape, completely different wines. In 1976, a blind taste test in Paris flipped everything. French judges tasted California wines against Burgundy's best, and the 1973 Chateau Montelena from California actually won. That tasting put New World wine on the global map for good. But by the mid-1990s, Chardonnay got so over-oaked that drinkers revolted. A wine writer named Frank Prial called it anything but Chardonnay in 1995. And that backlash is why you'll find way leaner Chardonnays today. But while Chardonnay was busy taking over everything, another grape was quietly building its own empire halfway around the world, and that grape is Sauvignon Blanc. The name itself tells you the personality. Sauvignon comes from the French word sauvage, which literally means wild or savage, because the vines grow super aggressively. Sauvignon Blanc started in Bordeaux, France, where it got blended into white Bordeaux for centuries. And there's a wild secret almost no one knows. Sauvignon Blanc is actually one of the parent grapes of Cabernet Sauvignon, the most famous red wine on earth. The other parent is Cabernet Franc. So this little white grape is literally the mother of the world's most planted red wine, and nobody noticed until DNA testing finally confirmed it in 1996. But the real plot twist happened in 1973. A New Zealand winery called Montana planted the first commercial Sauvignon Blanc vines in Marlborough on the South Island. By 1985, a winery called Cloudy Bay made a Sauvignon Blanc so loud with grapefruit, passion fruit, and freshly cut grass that the wine world flipped out. Critics literally called it the eyebrow factor because everyone who smelled it raised their eyebrows in shock. Today, Sauvignon Blanc makes up over 86% of all the wine New Zealand exports, and Marlborough alone has more than 22,000 hectares planted in the ground. There's actual chemistry behind that punch you taste. 2 compounds called methoxypyrazines and thiols are responsible. The pyrazines deliver the grass and bell pepper, while the thiols deliver the passion fruit and grapefruit kick. But not every white wine wants to scream at you, and that quiet energy is exactly why people fall in love with Pinot Grigio. Now this one trips people up because Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris are the exact same grape with 2 completely different personalities. The grape's a mutation of Pinot Noir with pinkish gray skin, which is where the name came from. Gris means gray in French. Grigio means gray in Italian. In Italy, especially up north, winemakers pick the grapes early and ferment them in stainless steel. You get a light, crisp, dry wine that tastes like green apple, lemon, and stones. The easiest white wine on the planet to drink without thinking. But cross over into Alsace, France, and the same grape becomes something completely different. Pinot Gris from Alsace gets riper, richer, and oilier, with flavors of peach, honey, ginger, and sometimes a hint of sweetness. There's also a hidden detail almost nobody talks about. Until 1961, Nobody in Italy made Pinot Grigio as a clear white wine. The grapes have pinkish skins, so the wines naturally came out copper-colored. Then a producer called Santa Margherita figured out how to press the grapes super fast and ferment the juice without skin contact. They invented the pale, crisp Pinot Grigio style we all drink today. And there's a third hidden style called Ramato, where winemakers leave the juice on those pink skins for a couple of days, and the wine comes out copper-colored and tastes nothing like normal Pinot Grigio. But if you want a white wine that tells you exactly what dirt it grew in, you need to talk about Riesling. Riesling tastes more like the soil it grew in than any other white wine on earth. The same grape grown in Germany versus Australia versus Washington tastes nothing alike, because Riesling picks up everything from the ground, especially slate and minerals. The grape's been around in Germany since at least 1435 in a town called Rüsselsheim. The Mosel Valley grows it on some of the steepest hills on the planet, with slopes so vertical that workers harvest by hand because no machine can climb up there. Now, the wildest fact about Riesling is what came next. The whole category of late harvest sweet wine got invented by total accident in 1775 at an estate called Schloss Johannisberg. The estate needed permission from the abbot to start harvesting, and the messenger got delayed for weeks. By the time he finally rode back, the grapes had hung on the vines way too long and started shriveling with mold. The winemakers said screw it and made wine out of them anyway. They called it Spätlese, which means late harvest. And the entire German sweetness ladder was born from one delayed messenger. That ladder runs Kabinett, Spätlese, Auslese, Beerenauslese, Trockenbeerenauslese, and Eiswein, getting riper and sweeter as you go up. Top examples can age for 50 years or longer. And one more hidden fact wine geeks love. Riesling and Chardonnay are actually distant cousins because both grapes share Gouais Blanc as a parent. So if dry German Riesling feels too intimidating, Moscato d'Asti is the easiest sweet wine on earth to fall in love with. Moscato d'Asti comes from Piedmont in northwest Italy, made from a grape called Moscato Bianco. That grape's one of the oldest grapes humans have ever farmed, and the Romans were drinking wine from it back in ancient times. We're talking literally 1,000 years older than Cabernet Sauvignon. What makes Moscato d'Asti so special is how it's made. Most sparkling wines go through 2 fermentations, but Moscato d'Asti only goes through 1, and the winemakers cut it off early. That's why the alcohol stays super low, around 5 to 6%. It's frizzante, which means lightly fizzy, not full-on bubbly like champagne or Prosecco. The flavor's wild because Moscato Bianco grapes actually taste like the wine they make. Most wine grapes don't really taste like the finished wine at all, but bite into a Moscato Bianco grape and you'll get peach, apricot, orange blossom, and that signature musky aroma. In 1993, Moscato d'Asti got Italy's highest wine ranking, called DOCG, the very top quality tier the country gives out. So if anyone tells you Moscato isn't a serious wine, they've never tried a real Moscato d'Asti from Piedmont. But there's one grape that does what Moscato does, and what Chardonnay does, and what Riesling does, and that grape is Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc is the chameleon of white wine. The same grape can make sparkling wine, bone dry wine, off-dry wine, sweet dessert wine, and oak-aged wine that ages for over 100 years. No other white grape on the planet has that range. It started in the Loire Valley of France around the 9th century, named after Montchenin, a small hill near a town called Tours. For over 1,000 years, French monks made Chenin Blanc in countless styles, with famous Loire spots like Vouvray, Savinière, and Cour de Chaume. But the twist almost nobody knows is what happened next. France isn't even the biggest grower anymore because South Africa is. Around 55% of all the Chenin Blanc on Earth grows in South Africa, where the locals call it Steen. And the wild part is South Africans didn't even know Steen was Chenin Blanc for centuries. The vines arrived with Dutch settler Jan van Riebeek in 1655, and the mix-up stuck around for almost 300 years, until DNA testing finally confirmed the truth. The aging power is genuinely insane. Top sweet Chenin Blancs from the Loire can age for over 100 years and still taste alive, while even dry Chenin Blanc develops honey, beeswax, and quince notes after just a decade. So next time someone says white wine doesn't age well, hand them a 30-year-old Vouvray and watch their face change. However, no white wine on this list smells more unforgettable than the next one, Gewürztraminer. The first sniff hits you like a perfume bomb, with lychee, rose petals, ginger, and Turkish delight all jumping out of the glass at once. Even people who don't drink wine recognize the smell instantly. There's actual chemistry behind it. The compound responsible is called linalool, and it's the exact same molecule that makes lychee fruit smell like lychee. Pour a glass of Gewürztraminer next to a fresh lychee, and the smells overlap perfectly. The grape itself is pink-skinned, which is unusual for a white wine grape. It started near a town called Tramin in northern Italy, up in the Alps. The Gewürz part of the name means spice in German, so the literal translation is spiced grape from Tramin. It got that full name in Alsace, France in the 1870s, and Alsace turned it into the signature variety it's known as today. Alsace is still the spiritual home of Gewürztraminer. The region makes everything from bone-dry versions to crazy sweet late-harvest wines, and the late-harvest Alsace style, called Vendange tardives, gets even more intense with honeyed apricot and ripe pineapple notes. Gewürztraminer is also one of the rare white wines that pairs with food most other whites can't handle, like spicy Thai curries, Indian dishes, Moroccan tagines, and even Roquefort cheese. But what if you want a white wine that actually tastes like the ocean itself? That's where Albarino comes in. Albarino grows in a tiny corner of Spain called Rías Baixas, on the northwest coast in Galicia. The locals call it Green Spain because it rains constantly. Galicia's regional language even has more than 100 different words just to describe rain. That's how wet it gets. The grape probably arrived here along the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage route in the 12th century, brought over by monks walking from France. For centuries, Albarino stayed mostly local, and outside Galicia, almost nobody had heard of it. Then in the 1990s, the wine world finally caught on to what locals had known the whole time. Albarino tastes like nothing else out there, with crisp green apple, white peach, citrus zest, and a salty, almost briny finish that genuinely reminds you of sea air. That's why Albarino became the world's go-to seafood wine. Galicia happens to be home to Vigo, which has one of Europe's biggest fishing fleets, and the locals built their whole cuisine around shellfish, octopus, and sardines. Albarino grew up alongside those dishes, so the pairing is basically built into its DNA. Speaking of comebacks, this next grape has the wildest survival story of any white wine on this list, and that grape is Viognier. In 1965, Viognier was 8 acres away from going extinct forever. Just 8 acres of it left in the entire world. The whole global supply was barely surviving in a small section of the northern Rhone Valley in France. Years of disease, tiny harvests, and changing tastes had nearly wiped it out. If a few stubborn farmers in a tiny zone called Condrieu hadn't refused to give up, Viognier would have vanished from the planet for good. Condrieu's a 130-hectare wine zone created in 1940, where every single bottle has to be 100% Viognier by law. Legend says Roman Emperor Probus brought the grape from Croatia in 281 AD. There's also a wilder story that an earlier emperor named Vespasian destroyed the Condrieu vines centuries before, because the locals revolted, and Vespasian blamed the rebellion on them drinking too much of the local wine. Then came the comeback. In the 1970s, drinkers got bored of Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay, so American producers like Joseph Phelps and John Albin brought Viognier cuttings to California in the 1980s. Today, there are around 40,000 acres of Viognier worldwide. What does it taste like? Pure perfume, with apricot, peach, honeysuckle, tangerine, and violets. Full-bodied like Chardonnay, but way more aromatic. And one final hidden fact wine geeks love. DNA testing showed Viognier is actually a genetic cousin of Nebbiolo, the Italian grape behind Barolo. But the most underrated grape on this entire list is Semillon, and you've probably never even tried it. Semillon's a golden-skinned grape from Bordeaux, France, and for most of the 1900s, it was one of the most planted white wine grapes anywhere on Earth. South Africa's vineyards were 90% Semillon back in the 1820s, and Chile's vineyards were 75% Semillon in the 1950s. In Bordeaux, Semillon plays 2 completely different roles. Blended with Sauvignon Blanc, it makes white Bordeaux, including dry oaked styles like Pessac Léognan. But the legendary version is Sauternes, the world's most famous sweet wine. The grapes get attacked by a fungus called Botrytis cinerea, also known as noble rot. That fungus dries out the grape and concentrates all the sugar, creating a wine so rich it tastes like apricot honey and almost lasts forever. Then there's Australia, where Semillon arrived in the Hunter Valley north of Sydney in the 1830s. The locals grew it for over a century while accidentally calling it Hunter River Riesling, and the wine they make there bears no resemblance to anything else on earth. Hunter Valley Semillon is unoaked, low alcohol around 11%, super crisp, and razor sharp when it's young. But age it 10 to 20 years, and somehow it transforms into something that tastes like buttered toast and honey. So Semillon's basically two completely different wines depending on where it grows. And that's every major white wine you'll ever see on a wine list, fully broken down. Check out the next video on screen that the algorithm picked out for you.